Alright, hey guys, welcome to the second half of the UFO script tutorial. If you haven't watched the first half, it's going to be linked in the description. It's also going to have a little pop-up on the screen for it. But we're going to start, continuing where we left off with that last video. We had the UFO working, we had the movement going, where you move left, right, all that good stuff, up, down, everything like that. So the next thing we're going to do, we're just going to set up the scene overall just before we get back into scripting. Basically what I had set up here was a series of walls just to make this an enclosed space. So let's go ahead and set that up real quick. And then once we get that set up, we'll be able to move forward and start scripting more with the actual barrels or the cows, however you want to really use it. Okay, so we got this one wall here. Just thin it out just a bit. Drag it on over. Same thing with this side. Doesn't really need to be the most perfect looking thing in the world. Then we also set up, let's move our light out of the way. You can go up. Let's make it a scale down here, about 5. Keep moving you up. And I just put a bunch of pillars in the scene. So let's just take this guy, drag him up. And then let's also just make him a little bigger overall. So let's lift him up a tad. And then let's just move him over in the corner here. Just drag a few out just to make it interesting. I also made sure to make this light not as bright. So we're going to go to about 0.75. And then if we go into our content browser and you type in gate and then static meshes, you should get these little, not even I guess, should be under mobile. There we go. Let's type in fence actually. Is that any better? Here we go. Alright. Grab a few of these pieces out. We're just going to make a little fenced area just so where we can put our cows and everything like that. It's not going to be the most perfect thing in the world. Doesn't really have to be. So let's just set this up real quick. Just has to be a gated area. Good enough. Doesn't have to be any better than that. So let's just quickly build lighting, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the implementation of the barrels, the dynamic objects, which will be what we abduct, essentially. So let's let light mass do its thing here. And then we'll go ahead and get started. Oh. Alright. And the best part is me and my housemates, we've been watching X-Files on Netflix. Definitely recommend it if you haven't watched X-Files. It's so good. We're on like season 4. We're like halfway through the whole entire series, so recommend it. So it's almost done. It's always like the last few percentages that take the longest. So if you want to skip ahead, I don't blame you. Come on. Time to break my computer, it looks like. Ooh. Come on. I don't get why it's always like the last few percentages that take the longest. What if I just like stop the build? There we go. Awesome. So now we have a little environment we can fly around in. We're gonna be like, ooh. So we got that working. The next thing we're going to do, we're just going to set up the actual dynamic, the barrels, the cows, or whatever you want to phrase it as. So let's go ahead and just get our barrel. We're going to start out with one. What we're going to do, we're going to right click on it, We're going to make it a K actor. So go to convert K actor. And then what we're going to do, go into its properties. And there's a few properties we want to make sure are present with this actual barrel. First is wake on level start, just so it's already a physical object right at the beginning of the level. We also want to do enable stay upright spring, just so they stand up straight, they never knock over or anything. That could cause problems in the future. And the last few things we need to check here is actually one last one. It's the encroach check. So if you type in encroach, basically that means if you make it false, meaning unchecked, it's able to recognize touch events with triggers and trigger volumes and things of that nature. Which is exactly what we want. And then the last thing we're going to do, we're going to just give this a dynamic trigger volume as well, just in case we need to reference it. So with the actual object selected, let's grab a cylinder. Now I see it doesn't have to be that big, so let's right click on it. Let's make the outer radius maybe 64. That's a little too big. Let's try 40. That's better. And then we're going to adjust the height in a moment here. Whoops. So let's drag that up. And then in the actual geometry tool, we'll slide that down. So now we have a dynamic trigger volume. Almost. Oh, what we have to do is go into volume, dynamic trigger volume, and there it is. So we got that going for us, which is awesome. So what we're going to do now that we have this one barrel set up the way we want to, as well as this trigger volume, we may need to make adjustments to the trigger volume's actual properties here. But most likely not, because I think by default dynamic trigger volumes have a collision of touch all but weapons. Let's just change that to just touch all to play it safe. And now that we have that set up, let's just go ahead and make 2 more duplicates of this, so there's 3 in total. I'll just put them randomly in a level here, just so it's an adventure to grab them. So now that we have those barrels set up, we're going to do a couple things. Honestly, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and attach those dynamic triggers to the actual barrels. So let's go ahead and set that up. Let's go into Kismet. And down here, we'll start. It's going to be when the level's loaded. That's going to be your initial event. So let's go to level loaded. And then we're going to need a new action, actor, and then attach to actor. We're going to need 3 of these, but we'll first connect them all. So copy and paste. Me and my OCD wanting these lines straight. Alright, now that we have all 3 set up, we're going to go ahead and attach each K actor to its own unique dynamic trigger volume. So let's start with the first one right here. Let's grab the actual K actor. That's going to be our target. And then its trigger volume will be its attachment. So let's do that to each one. So again, the actual K actor is the target, the attachment is its trigger volume. Alright, now we got that set up, which is perfect. So what we need to do now is we should create an object list just to keep track to which barrels are not have not been abducted by the player and which barrels have been abducted. So there's going to be 2 different object lists we're going to create. But first we're going to go ahead and just create the first one. In order to do so, let's fully open up Kismet here. Let's right click, new variable, object, and then object list. And then with this, we're going to give it a special variable name. We're going to call this unabducted barrel list. And just so we can keep track to how many barrels we have in that unabducted barrel list, we're going to create a new integer variable. So let's go to new variable int, and then just a normal int. Leave it at 0. Variable name, we'll call it an unabducted barrels, or we'll do number of unabducted barrels. Now we got that set up. So all we need to do now is actually put those K actors, those barrels, the ones that haven't been abducted yet, we're going to put those into that object list. To do that, we'll go right click, new object, object list, modify object list. And basically, at the end of this trail, we're going to add to list. And the object references that we're going to add to this list are going to be our K actors. So let's copy and paste each one. plug it in. Now our object list variable, that's the one we just created, the unabducted barrel list, but we'll make that a named variable to make things clean. So let's go to new variable, named variable, expected type, it's going to be object list, and then its name is going to be unabducted barrel list, and we got a green check mark to make sure it matches. And we also want to keep track of the number of unabducted barrels. So let's create another named variable, and I believe the name was number of unabducted barrels. Then it's an integer, so let's plug that in as well. So basically what we did so far, as soon as the level loads, we take all those barrels, we put them into an object list called unabducted barrels. We keep track of the number using that variable, that integer variable of the number of unabducted barrels, just so we can keep track of these numbers, because we're going to need to reference that. Because when the player left clicks, that's going to be our abduction, but when they right click, that's when it's going to shoot them out. So we need to know how many barrels have been abducted, just so we know when to shoot them out and things of that nature. So what we're going to do now that we have these barrels set up, we're going to work back with our actual UFO. There's a few things we still need to have set up with that. And the first thing we're going to have set up is going to be first the light. It's going to be a spotlight. So let's go back near our barrel. So right click, actually instead of right clicking, hold down the L key and then left click to bring in a light. It's going to come in as a point light, which is fine, but we're going to right click on that point light, do convert light, spotlight, and then just a normal spotlight. And with this spotlight in particular, we want it to be relatively, bright, just to give the illusion, it's an abduction light. So in its properties, let's hit F4. First thing, we're going to give it a specific cone angle. We're going to do 30 and 60 just so it has a good range and a good fall off as well. Let's also give it a light shaft to make it kind of look cool. Let's increase its bloom. Maybe to 2s, and actually no, 3 is going to be enough of that. And then we're going to adjust the light color and the light brightness. I made mine 10 in brightness just because it's pretty bright. And then we change the color to just a subtle blue color. Nothing spectacular, nothing normal. No, nothing special about it. Now what we're going to do, we're going to go and manually place this light to be right underneath it. And we're also going to go back to its properties. Under enabled, we're unchecking that just because we don't want it to be turned on. But the last thing we need to do, we actually need to convert it to a spotlight movable, just because we're going to attach this light to the actual UFO, and we're going to toggle it on and off using Kismet. So do your best to center this up. And then with that light selected, let's go back into Kismet. And we're going to do another attach to actor. And the reason why you need multiple of these, at least from what I've seen, if you try to attach multiple actors to the same target in one node, that's when you start running into problems and objects won't attach properly. So with that attach actor, instead of the trigger volume being the attachment, it's going to be our spotlight. And then what we're going to do now, we're going to set up two things. First things first is basically we're going to set up our our UFO beam. The way I did it, I used a cone mesh. I believe it's under light. If you look under light, if you type that in, where is it? Which one is it? Hopefully I didn't just pass it. Yeah, light beams. This mesh, when you drag it in, it already has a material applied to it. So if you want to see what it looks like normal, you would basically put on a default material to it. I believe I already saved a version of it. I did. And if you actually type into your content browser default and under engine and then materials, you're going to get default material. So F4 on that light shaft, add a material, just hit that green arrow when you have the default material, and this is what the cone looks like. So it's easier to manipulate and maneuver and things of that nature. I kind of want this tractor beam to be a little taller and a little wider. Perfect. And this mesh will also be a interactor because we're going to attach it. So let's go ahead and make that happen here. So let's right click on it, convert mover. We're also going to give it a specific collision. Nothing to be too big. We just wanted to have it to touch all. So let's type in collision, touch all. And that should be it. That's all we really need to set up with this guy. Just again, I'm working at the moment. So now let's put him into place. We want it to be attached down here, just so it's kind of at the bottom. And I created a specific material for this beam, and I'll show you in just a moment. You know, with that, you don't have to really follow along with the actual material, but I'll show you anyways, because I'm a nice guy. I think I called it beam, if I'm not mistaken. There we go. Matte_UFO beam. Basically created a light like that. Nothing too big. Just have an alpha mask, a light color for emissive. So it's basically emissive and a opacity mask, just so you can only see like a beam of light. So I have a panner. That's what makes it go up and down. If you make speed Y like 4, it's going to increase how fast that goes up and down. But we should make it maybe 1.75, something like that. So we're going to save that. And we're going to go ahead and click on this again. And then under material, instead of it being the default, we're going to put it as that material. So we got that working for us. The last thing we're going to do, it's going to be, we're going to make sure it's hidden, just because we don't want it showing right away. Just before we do that, we're going to go ahead and attach it to the UFO. So with that box selected, or the cone I should say, let's go ahead and attach that to our UFO. And before we hide it, we're just going to make sure it's attaching properly. We may need to give it a relative offset just so it looks right. But let's go ahead and play. It looks like we are good with that. So it's attaching properly, which is perfect. So we know that's working. So with that selected, just type hidden, and under display, just check hidden. So whenever you play, it's not going to be there. So now if we play, you're not going to see it. One last thing we're going to do. This is going to be kind of strange in terms of why we're going to do it. But I'll show you in just a moment what we're going to do. We're basically going to create a copy of this. So it's Alt-Shift-Drag a copy of that. Let's give it the default material. Just so we can see it. And we're going to make this really small. And this is going to basically be our the way we're going to go ahead and determine whether or not basically a barrel's touching. Well, he's touching the barrel, not the barrel, but the barrels are touching the crate itself. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to move this in place. We're going to put it right there, just so it's relatively close to the UFO here. And we're going to go ahead and get started here. This is where we're going to go ahead, and it's going to get a little bit confusing, nonetheless. So give me a moment here. I'm just looking on the other screen that I have, because I haven't looked at this in a bit. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Okay. I remember now. Okay. So we're actually going to set this up. This is where when we unabduct the barrels, this is where they're going to spawn from. They're going to shoot from this target area, this mesh, and launch downward from there. So we have it as an interactor already, which is good news. It's already hidden. The only thing we have to do now is just attach it. So we're just going to copy and paste that. Replace that with the new interactor. And now we're set with that. So now it's time for the meat and potatoes of everything here. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do, we're going to set up a touch event for the actual beam mesh, the one that has that animated material. Give me a moment. Oh, looks like my UDK is crashing. Very good. Good stuff. Okay, we're back. Let me go ahead and save, just in case. So let's select that mesh. It's going to be kind of hard to select just because it's using a transparent material. So if you can't select it, just make sure you have transparent selection or translucent selection. So now we have that selected. Let's go into Kismet. Now we're going to set up basically how we can go ahead and abduct the barrels. So let's right click, new event, touch. In the touch event, it's going to be a couple things we're going to change. We're going to set class proximity types to none. The reason we're going to do that, that actually allows it to touch anything. It's going to go ahead and recognize all things that touch it, basically. But we're going to go ahead and filter out what it's touching based on what's being abducted, what its instigator is, things of that nature. But first, we need to do some more changes here. We're going to uncheck force overlapping because that requires the player to be overlapping at the time of activation. Max trigger count, it's going to be 0. Last but not least, we're going to go ahead and uncheck player only. So now let's right click on instigator to create new object variable. It's going to be blank object variable, and basically the instigator is what starts this touch event. So basically what touches this intervector. And it's at that point we're going to compare what that object is to what we want, what it should be for this. So before we go ahead and even do that, we're going to create some variables here. It's going to be 3 booleans. They're going to keep track of which barrels are touching that beam. So let's right click, new variable, bool. All these are going to be set to false. First one's name, it's going to be B is touching beam 01. Then we're going to copy and paste that, change the 01 to a 02. And then one more time, change that from a 02 to a 03. And you're going to do this with as many barrels as you have. I have 3, that's why I'm making 3 booleans. If you have 10, you're going to have 10 booleans. It does get a little bit wild after that point, but if you want to do that, go for it. But now that we have those variables set up, let's go ahead and we're going to compare the object that the beam is touching at the time. So with that, we're going to need to do a new compare. So new condition, comparison, compare objects. So touched, it's going to go in. And we're going to go find the first barrel, which is right here. And we're going to keep a track of this dynamic trigger volume. So we're going to put for A, the blank object variable. And for B, we're going to right click and put in that dynamic trigger volume for the first barrel. And what we're going to do is if it equals, if the beam is touching that that trigger volume, we're going to set that variable we just set up, that boolean, from false to true. So let's go to new action, set variable, bool, value. Let's create a new boolean and then change the 0 to a 1 to make it true. Then let's right click, new variable, named variable. It's going to be bool. Oops. And then we're going to just copy and paste the name for beam 01. And plug that into target, and then the equals. So if those are the two same things there, we're going to go ahead and plug that in. Didn't plug in the first time. So what we're doing right now is that beam we have, the one that animates, the one that's hidden at the moment, if it touches this trigger volume that's on screen, we're going to set that boolean to true. And then, based on whether or not certain booleans are true or not, that's when we're going to go ahead and, play certain animations, things of that nature. So, what we need to do now is the same exact thing, but with the other booleans we have set up. So let's copy and paste these guys. Change the boolean from 01 to 02. Update the trigger volume with the next one. So right click on it, update that. And basically what we're going to connect this with is with the first comparison. If the object we're touching does not equal that first trigger volume, we're going to see if it equals the second one. And if it does, we're going to set that one to true. We're going to do that with the last boolean and the last barrel. So let's go to that last dynamic trigger volume, select that, right click and update it, and then we're going to update the boolean from 02 to 03. We're going to straighten that out, and then we're going to plug this in. Just going to slide this over a little bit just so it looks a little cleaner. And the last thing we're going to set up for this section is whenever that trigger, not the trigger, but the actual beam, the one that has the animated material on it, we're basically going to tell it, hey, if you untouch anything, we're going to set all these variables back to false just to make sure and make sure it's clean. So let's go new action, set variable, bool, right click on value, create new bool variable. It's false by default, so we don't have to change anything. So let's copy and paste these three named variables here, plug them into target. So now every time that beam is untouched, we turn those to false, which is absolutely perfect. So now, we still have no real way to test anything, so we're just going to keep pushing forward, as one would say. We're going to go ahead and actually start setting up the event for when we want to abduct a barrel. So, right click, new event, input, key button pressed. Input names, we want the left click to start abducting, and that name is left mouse button, one word, and the L, M, and B in left mouse button are capitalized. And just to confirm it's working, we can go to new action, voice announcements, and just hit left click, put that in, but we're also going to have to disable cinematic mode, or at least uncheck hide HUD just so we can see any voice announcements. So if we hit left click, that comes up, we know it's working. So let's go ahead and check back hide HUD, disconnect that play announcement. So whenever we do press that button, we want to go ahead and unhide the tractor beam, and when we release it, we want to hide it again. With that, we need to set something in the values of the key button pressed event, which is the RE trigger delay. We're going to make that 0, just so it can recognize when the button's being released. Now we can go ahead and turn on the visibility of the tractor beam. So let's go to new action, toggle, and then toggle hidden. So whenever we press it, we want to unhide, and then also repeated, we're going to unhide. But when we release it, we're going to hide it again. And our target is going to be that beam. We're going to have to select that again. I believe we have it selected. We do. So make that the target. Right click on it, new object bar. So we can already see if it's working or not. Let's play. Left click. There's our beam. Let go. It's gone. Really simple. Simple as that. So we're going to do the same exact thing, except we're going to do it with the spotlight. So let's select the spotlight in the editor. Right there. We're going to need a different toggle hidden. It's going to be new action toggle, and we're just going to do a normal toggle. Target's going to be our light, and kind of the same thing. When we press it, we want to turn it on. When we repeat pressing that left click, we want to keep turning it on, and when we release it, we want to turn it off. So let's go ahead and see if that's working. Let's go ahead and play. And there's our light. It's working as well. Perfect. So far so good. We're on the right track here. Then there's actually a specific sound cue that I want to have playing while you're pressing and keep on pressing that tractor beam button. So let's get into content browser. Its name, I believe, is respawn. It has the word respawn in it. So let's go to sound cues under UDK game. Respawn, and it's going to be a pickup weapons respawn queue. This guy. So have him selected. Go back into Kismet. Right click, new action, sound, play sound. I did some settings changes in here. I increased the volume multiplier by 2, and I changed the pitch and multiplied it by 0.85, so it's a little less, so it's a little, I believe, a little deeper. And then we need to just hit the green arrow with that sound cue selected to put it in. And basically, when we press it, we want to play, and when we repeat, we want to play. And then when it's finished, since it is a relatively short sound audio clip, we want to set a delay of 0.01 after finished, put it back into play, but then we want to put released into stop so it can actually stop the sound. And then as a target, whenever you set a play sound target, the target means where you want the sound to basically be emitting from. So let's get a copy of our UFO main variable because we want it to be kind of stemming from the crate itself, the UFO. Plug that in. So let's go ahead and see if that's working. And there's our noise. And we have our light. And the sound stops. And everything's working so far, which is pretty good. Now what we need to do is when we hit left click, we want to check whether or not that tractor beam mesh is touching one of those trigger volumes. So we're going to need a comparison for those booleans that we had set. So let's go back into Kismet, right click, new condition, compare bool. Under pressed and released, we're going to go put that in. I'm not sorry, pressed and repeated, not pressed and released. The bool we want to have, let's start with the first one. And if this is true, we're going to set up a remote event to actually perform animations. So it'll allow the tractor beam to move up, or not the tractor beam, but the barrel. So let's just set up those. For right now, it's not going to work, but we're going to set up those remote events. So let's go to new action, event, activate remote event. This one, it's going to be called Abduct Barrel 1. Plug that into true. And then we're going to go and copy and paste this guy. Disconnect anything that connects with those events. From false, we're going to go in, because if this is false, we're going to see, hey, is the second barrel doing anything? So let's change this to 02. Copy and paste this remote event. Change it from Abduct Barrel 01 to 02. Plug that into true. We'll do this one last time for the third barrel. So you'll have to do this for each barrel or cow, whatever you want to say you have in your level. So let's just update that to 3, as well as the remote event to number 3. And now we have that all set up. All we have to do now is set up the actual event for when we abduct those barrels. It's not going to be too hard. So with that, let's go ahead and we're going to start with the first barrel. So let's right click, new event, remote event, copy and paste the name Abduct Barrel 01. As you can see, there's a green check mark, it's matching. We'll just need to delete it and Control Z to get that to check. And then whenever that's called, we want to go ahead. There's two things, well, there's a couple of things we're going to have to do. Because right now K-actors, they're a rigid body, that's what their collisions are set with. In order to get something to animate properly, we need to set its physics to interpolating. So we're going to do that first. So go to new action. Believe it is under actor, and then down here there should be an option. Actually no, it's under physics, and then set physics. Plug that in. Let's change it from phys none to phys interpolating. And then our target, it's going to be our first barrel. So let's go ahead and select that K-actor, and then right click on target and set K-actor to that object. Now we can go ahead and actually animate this bad boy. So let's go ahead and hit M, or at least hold down M in Kismet, left click to create a new matinee, double click that, make sure our K-actor is selected in the scene, let's right click, add new empty group. We'll call this barrel underscore 01 underscore abduction animation. And right click on that, add new movement track, we're basically going to do kind of a similar thing that we did with the actual movement of the UFO. We're going to set this to about 0.1 seconds. Hit the enter key to create a keyframe. I believe it was 20 units, so let's go up by 4, then up by 16. And then if we loop in place, it's going to be like blah, 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 blah. So we know that's working. In the matinee itself, kind of like what we did for the UFO movement, we're going to check rewind on play and check no reset on rewind. I'm sorry. So that means, it'll play the animation, it'll rewind while it's playing, and no reset means it's not going to reset its position. So it's going to go up by 20, up by 20, up by 20, up by 20, as long as it's playing. So we're going to go ahead, plug that into play. And whenever it's completed, basically when it completes, it's at 0.1 second, where it goes up by 20 units. Whenever that's completed, and the animation stops essentially at that point, we're going to set the physics back to rigid body. That'll allow it to become a K actor again and actually bounce like it has physics and things of that nature. So let's copy and paste that set physics, go from phys interpolating to phys rigid body, plug that into completed, and that's basically all we have to do to get that animation kind of going. So let's see if that's working. So let's go ahead and abduct this bad boy. Okay, here we go. It's working. The one problem is the kill volume in levels by default is set to 0. It's set to the origin of the z-axis. That's why that barrel kind of disappeared. So let's go to View, World Properties, type in kill z. Let's make that like negative 2048 or something, just something far away. And let's try that again. And we can keep pulling it up as long as we want to. And then if we let go, it turns back into a physics volume, or a physics actor, and it drops back down, which is absolutely perfect. It's exactly what we want, or at least what I wanted in this. You can change that to whatever you see fit, I guess. So for the next part, we're going to go ahead, and this is where we're going to set it so when it actually touches the UFO, it disappears, and we add it to that second object list I was mentioning. So since we're making a second object list, let's go ahead and copy these two. We're going to copy paste the object list and the integer to count how many objects are in that list. Change the name from unabducted barrel list to abducted barrel list, and the same thing goes for number of unabducted barrels. We're going to do number of abducted barrels. So now we're basically free reign to go ahead and set up the next section. Just before we do that, I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup here. I'm going to comment this in UFO initialization. Then I'm going to copy, no, not copy, I'm going to select all that, right click on it, create new sequence, just call this UFO underscore initialization. So now it's not in the way anymore, because that's all we had to do for that. There's not much change we have to do in regards to that at all. So now let's move this up just to give us more room to work with, just so we don't get confused. Let's move things to the side for a bit. And let's just move this up. Alright, so let's go ahead and set up the actual ability for those K actors to disappear. Add them to the object list and remove them from the other one. So we want this to happen anytime the K actor itself touches the dynamic trigger volume of the UFO, the one right here. So let's go ahead and select that K actor, the barrel 01. Whoops. So we're going to right click, new event, touch, like the actual trigger volumes. Yeah, the other trigger volume events we had. Remember we set the class proximity type to none. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to uncheck force overlapping. We're also going to make this max trigger count at 0. And we're going to uncheck player only. This will allow this to recognize a bunch of different touch events, but at this point we're going to compare whether or not it's going to be touching the dynamic trigger volume that we just saw. So let's select that dynamic trigger volume around the UFO, and right click, new condition, comparison, compare objects. Go ahead and we're going to put touched into in here. We're also going to create a new blank object variable under instigator. That will be the object that it's touching. And then we're going to right click on B, input of compare objects, use that trigger volume in there, and then A is going to be that instigator. So if A equals B, if it is touching the UFO's trigger volume, we're going to stop the animation, so it's going to stop moving. And we're going to go ahead and hide the K actor. So let me move this down slightly. So go into action, toggle, toggle hidden. And then under hide, go place that in there. And then the target again, let's give it K actor. So let's grab that guy, put him under target. And now it's at this point that we're going to modify those object lists, the two that we have set up. So we're going to go ahead and remove this object from the original object list. So let's go to new action, object list, modify object list, then remove from list. Object reference is going to be the K actor. And then the object list var is going to be the abducted barrels. I believe it's up here, the unabducted barrel list. So let's copy and paste that guy. And then the same thing goes for the list entries count. It's going to be the integer variable we have set up as well. And then after this is where we're going to add this barrel to the other object list we have set up, the abducted barrels. So let's copy and paste this guy. And then instead of putting it to remove from list, we're going to do add to list. And then change the names from unabducted to abducted. Since we named them properly, they'll update properly as well. And that's basically how you set up all these barrels. So all we need to do at this point is copy and paste this one and update it to match the second barrel. So the remote event is going to be 02. The K actor variable is going to be the second one over here. So let's update everywhere we see K actor 1. So you just right click on everything, assign it, and then it updates properly. So now that should work as well. Let's see if it's actually working on these two. Let me see if I can update this, not update, but abduct the second barrel. And we can. And as you can see, the barrel falls. You can see the trigger volume still around it, but it's hidden. We only see that because the show volumes is turned on. If that wasn't turned on, you wouldn't even know. So let's see if it's working for the first barrel. And it is. Perfect. It's just not working for the third barrel, only because we haven't set that up. Let's go ahead and do that. So copy and paste this entire section. Select the third K actor. And you'll need to do this for as many barrels, K actors, whichever you have, in total in the level. So let's change the remote event from barrel 2 to barrel 3, then update these K actors, making sure you have it selected in the scene. And there we go. So now they all should disappear and be abducted. So let's go ahead and play and just abduct the third barrel just so we can know if that's working or not. And it is. Perfect. So we know that's working. And that's basically the majority of our script. The only thing now we need to do is give the player the ability to use the right click, the right mouse button, to shoot back the barrels out and put them into this gate essentially. So let's go back into Kismet. Let's do a little bit of cleanup here. Let's grab this guy, move him a little closer to these guys. Grab this whole bunch, right click, create new sequence. We'll call this UFO underscore abduction logic. It'll create this little block for us. Put it up here near the other ones. Let's also grab this guy. Right click, create new sequence. We'll call this tractor beam underscore touch event. Grab him, move him towards the top here. And then I believe we have all the variables that we're going to need. So let's organize these guys a little bit better. So we have our camera, we have the UFO, and then we have the UFO's trigger volume. Then we have two object lists, one for abducted barrels, the other one for unabducted barrels. Then we have 2 integers for the abducted barrels to keep a track of their number. We also have that for the abducted ones as well. And then we have 3 booleans, all to check whether or not the tractor beam is touching the barrel, or those cows, however you want to phrase it. So that's all our variables. So let's select them all, hit C to comment, name these guys variables. Now we have it kind of neat. And now we can move on to the very, very last part, which, like I said, is launching the barrels back out from the UFO. So we want this all to stem from the right mouse button event. So let's right click, go down to new event, input, and then key button pressed. Add an input name. It's going to be, instead of left mouse button, it's going to be named right mouse button. And just trust me, it's going to work, but you can use that voice announcement. I just don't want to take the time to disable the HUD again to see if that's working. I just know it will be, because I had to find that out myself. So now what we're going to do is, whenever this is pressed, we want to go ahead and we're going to check to see how many abducted barrels there are. So let's go to right click, new condition, compare in, pressed is going to go in to the compare. And like I said, we're going to compare the number of abducted barrels. So let's go ahead and copy this one, change its name to abducted barrels, put that into A, and we're going to compare this to the number 0. So we're going to see if the player has more than, and at least has 1 barrel put in. So if they do, if A is greater than B, if they had more than 0, they have at least 1, we're going to access the object list of the abducted barrels. So let's go to new action, object list, access object list. And we're going to go to random. So I see A greater than B. Put that into random. We're just going to pick one of those barrels by random. And then with the object list, it's going to be the abducted barrel list. So let's just copy and paste the unabducted one, change its name to match the one we need. And then object list, put that in. And then what we need to do, we actually need to create one last object variable. It's going to be a blank object variable. So let's right click, new variable, object, and then object. And we're just going to name this launched barrel. This is going to be the barrel that's launched out of the UFO. And so let's go ahead and right click, new variable, name variable, make this an object, then change its name to launched barrel. We got that green check mark, and we're going to put that as output object. So now we have, whenever we launch a barrel, that whatever barrel that is, since it's going to be random, it's going to be put into that object variable for us. Now what we need to do, we're going to unhide that launch barrel because they were hidden whenever they get abducted. Let's go to new action, toggle hidden, put that into unhide, and then put in the launch barrel as our target. And just to play it safe, we're going to set the physics again to phys rigid body. So let's go to new action, physics, set physics, change from phys none to phys rigid body. Our target, launched barrel. Then we're going to go ahead, since we're launching them, we kind of want to give it a velocity. We kind of want to kind of shoot down in the Z direction, the negative Z direction. So let's go to new action. I believe it's under actor, set velocity. And then we're going to set the direction using a vector. So let's go to new variable, vector, plug that into velocity direction. And we're only going to give it a custom one in the Z. And when we shoot downwards, it's negative. So we're going to give it about negative 500. I thought that was pretty good. Put this into place, plug it in. And then a target, see, like we should know, it's going to be the launched barrel. And then what we're going to do is, if you notice, whenever we saw the dynamic trigger volumes, whenever we go ahead and toggle the hidden property of those barrels, it hides the barrel, but they fall to the ground, as you can see with the volume, so they're still in the place you abducted them. So what you need to do is teleport them to your UFO section, and that's why we created this little guy. this little cone that's the interbacter. We're going to grab him. That's where these guys are going to teleport to. They're going to teleport to that object's location. So with that, let's go to New Action. I believe it's under, is it under Actor? Yeah, it is. And then Teleport. Target, going to be Launch Barrel. Destination, making sure that object is selected in the scene. We're going to right-click on Destination, use that object variable for the interbacter. So we're almost done here. But what we need to do is update the object list. Since we're launching the barrels out, we want to remove it from the abducted barrel list and add it back to the unabducted barrel list. With that, let's go ahead and copy and paste this modify object list. Disconnect these K actors and remove them completely. Change this guy's names for, actually let's go ahead and leave this how it stands, but we're going to copy and paste this one last time because we're going to need both of them. The first thing we're going to do is the abducted barrel list. We're going to add it back to that abducted barrel list. Or remove it from the abducted barrel list, I'm sorry. So change those to the abducted version. And then go to remove from list. And then the object reference is going to be launched barrel. And then we're going to go ahead and add that launched barrel back into the unabducted barrel list. So it's going to be the object reference as well for that modified object. So we're almost done. There's only a few pieces of things that we have to do next. Basically how I want it set up is when you launch a barrel, the tractor beam is going to come back on. So we need to toggle that back on. So let's go back to the very beginning over here. Let's go to New Action, Toggle, Toggle Hidden, and every time, first off, every time we go ahead and release the right mouse button, we want to hide the tractor beam. So released goes into hide. But if A is greater than B, meaning there is an abducted barrel, we want to go ahead and unhide that beam. So we just need to grab that beam again from our scene. This guy's hard to grab. I think I got him. There. Perfect. Right click on target, put him in as the interbacter. We got that set up. And then we also need to turn on and off the spotlight. So, New Action, Toggle, Normal Toggle. Let's grab the spotlight. Set that as the target. And every time we release the right mouse button, we want to turn off the light. And whenever there is an abducted barrel, when A is greater than B, we want to go ahead and turn it on. So we're almost done here. Last thing we're going to do is every time a barrel is launched out, I basically want to have it that there's some sort of sound plays. The sound I chose, it's the armor pickup noise. So let's go to our content browser, type in chest armor, this one. Then we're going to right click, New Action, Sound, Play Sound. I set the same kind of volume, not volume, but the same kind of properties for this sound that we did for the tractor beam sound. So it's 2 times in volume and then 0.85 times in the pitch. And we put that in, and we're going to play it whenever we set this velocity. So it's going to be a little bit before we actually teleport the barrel. And then the target itself, it's going to be the UFO again. So let's go ahead and find the UFO name variable. I believe it's going to be under UFO initialization. Copy it here, go back to the main page, paste, and plug that into target. And we're good to go. That's everything. So let's see if that's working. So let's grab one barrel. Alright, so we got them. And then if we right click, whoops, it looks like that messed up. I wonder what's going on. Let's try that again. Okay. looks like we're running into some problems here. First off, the sounds aren't playing. Nothing's really working at that point. Let's see what's going on. Go back to Kismet. So we got the number of abducted barrels going. Got that working. Let's see what's going on. This is strange. Looks like we have, like, because I have the example Kismet in front of me. It looks like it's all the same here. Then we'll remove it from the abducted barrel list. Add it back to the unabducted barrel list. So actually, let's get a log set up here. Let's just copy and paste this level loaded. Hold down L, left click for log. Target, it's going to be the player, so hold down the P key. It gives us the all player node. Uncheck all players. Right click on log, expose variable. Let's go to integer. And let's get a number of abducted barrels connected and number of unabducted barrels connected. Let's see what's going on. Put that into the level start. Let's create a 1 second delay. Plug that back in the beginning so it loops. So let's see what's going on. So we got 0, 3. Let's go ahead and abduct this barrel. Now we have 1 and 2. Okay, so it looks like something's not playing right, because we're releasing the barrel, but it's not getting to the point where it actually adds it and removes it from those object lists. So let me see what's going on. So let's go ahead, do new action, voice announcement, play announcement. We're just going to do one that says activated. We're going to see if it actually reaches this point where we access the object list for abducted barrels. So if we right click, nothing happens, which is fine. Now we have an abducted barrel. Go ahead and right click. It says, alright, so we get to activated. So we know this part's going. But it doesn't unhide the barrel correctly. So I'm going to connect it that way. Let's try that again. Oh yeah, this isn't working just because... Actually, why is that not working? Let's see here. These events aren't getting called properly. I'm not too sure what's going on. Let's see. Oh, okay, I see what's going on. We forgot to set the trigger delay to 0, so that's why the spotlight and that enter vector are still showing. That shouldn't explain. Maybe it will. Let's see. Okay. So it's still teleporting this guy. But we know that trigger delay was fine. So let's see. Alright, what's going on? That's set up correctly. That also is set up correctly. We just want to unhide the launched barrel. I'm not too sure why that's not getting set correctly. Maybe we have to, because the sound's not even playing either. Let's see. What is going on? Let's see if we can't figure this out. So it's teleporting it, but the sound's not playing. Is there not even a sound? Did we mess that up? Let's see. Yeah, we messed that up. We haven't even put the sound cue in. Alright, so that's a derp moment. My bad for that. Let's see if we can get the sound playing now. So that sound's playing, but we're still running into a problem where it's not removing it from the list properly here. So let's see. Yeah, we're removing it from the abducted barrel list and adding it back to the abducted barrel list. Why is that not activating correctly? That's what I wonder. And it's also not unhiding the K actor properly at all. I wonder if we set this to interpolating, it'll actually unhide itself. Let's find out. Okay, so it does unhide it when it's interpolating. I think I know what's going on. So, let's move these guys here. Copy and paste the set physics. The second set physics is going back to rigid body. And then back to set velocity. So let's see if that's working. Now that we changed the physics of this barrel. That could be what's going on. Still not working. I think it might be because we have to set the physics rigid body at the very end. That might be what's going on. I wonder if we need to set it to physics rigid body. Let's test. Because I'm assuming it's not going to teleport or anything. Let's see. I don't think it teleports. Let's try this. Yeah, so working with, physics collision and physics abilities is kind of confusing. Let's see. Because when we have the physics rigid body, it teleports. But when we don't, it doesn't teleport. But if we have it set to rigid body, it teleports, but it doesn't unhide properly. What could be going on here? Let's see. let's take a look at those numbers. Alright, so it teleports, but nothing changes. Whereas we uncheck that, we just do interpolating. It does the whole thing correctly. Let's see this again. So it's stuck mid-air. That doesn't make any sense. What if we set the physics rigid body there? Wonder if that's going to change anything. Still breaks it. Whenever we set it to physics rigid body, it basically breaks that setup, which doesn't make sense. Let me show you here. I'm starting to confuse myself. Here's the original scene. Let me just set that back there. Let's go ahead and double check. Yeah, it's working. And if we look at the Kismet for this guy, it's basically what we were just looking at, where the physics rigid body is right there. But for one reason or another, it's just not working properly. Let me take a look. These barrels must have a custom physics on them. Let's take a look. No, they have rigid body on. Do ours have rigid body on? Yeah, they do. What could be the difference here? Not too sure. So let me copy and paste this guy into our Kismet that we've been working with. Let's delete that. And then paste. We just gotta change some variables around. Okay. Everything else is going to be the same. We need to update the light actors. And the interactors. Let's see here. I hate when things like this happen. It's so confusing. So even no matter how good you are, you're gonna get confused. Let's see if this changes anything. Still does the same thing. So something's got to be going on that we might have forgot. Let's go ahead and check our abducted logic here. And compared to what we have, should match, which I believe it does. Yeah, everything matches. I'm so confused right now. Let's see. Okay. I guess just for the sake of the length of this video, I'm going to make a third video once I figure out what's going on between these two. And I'll make a third video that clears everything up, hopefully. So definitely apologize, for the kind of messy ending of this video. We're almost there. We're at the final, last mile here. We just gotta see. I'm gonna see what's going on. Why these barrels aren't, spawning back how they should. So again, thanks for watching, guys. Tune in for tomorrow. That's where I'm gonna hopefully film the third part of the series, just to get this closed for us. But I'll see you next time. Again, thanks for watching. See you. Bye.